I didn't believe in ghosts when I went to war. I believed in batteries, checklists, and the weight of a rucksack chewing my shoulders raw. I believed in the smell inside a Huey, JP4 and hot metal, and that sweet sour burn of fear nobody admits to. I believed in the mission because you have to, or else everything you do turns to ash in your mouth. I was 19 when I shipped out and 20 when I first heard the dead speak. Not my dead, not American voices. These were Vietnamese words poured through a tin throat, warped and pleading and too close to the human heart for comfort. I was attached to a small psychological operations team, PSYOP, the guys who drop leaflets and sling loudspeakers, the ones who try to fight a war with noise and suggestion. Our job was to broadcast messages that might get a patrol to turn back, a unit to break, a village to stay home. For that, we used recordings, announcers, music, and sometimes a piece of tape people still whisper about. Ghost tape number 10. You can look up the sterile parts of it in an after-action report. The Vietnam War spanned 1955 to 1975. The North had backing from the Soviet Union and China. The South had us. The battlefield was a jungle that grew back over your boot prints before your second step. And the Vietnamese, North and South, carried beliefs about ancestors that ran deeper than any trench. You honor the dead with rites, incense, prayers. You bring them home. Die far from home without proper burial, and your soul wanders, restless and alone. We learned that before we learned the weight of an M60. Some officer somewhere drew a brutal conclusion. If the enemy feared becoming a wandering soul, then a voice from the jungle claiming to be a wandering soul might move them more than any leaflet ever could. So the tape was made in a studio, actors performing grief, engineers bending frequencies until they hurt, a woman keening like a mother who can't find her son, a man's voice, thin with despair, confessing, "I am dead. Go home before it's too late." We called the broader campaign Operation Wandering Soul. We hid speakers in trees, lashed them to the sides of Hueys, rigged them on the banks of black water. At night, we pressed play and tried to make fear do our work. That's the official story. Mine starts the first time the tape spoke back. It was the tail end of the monsoon. A night so wet it felt like the air could drown you. We were set to run a broadcast along a tree line where patrols were known to slip through. A patch of mangrove and palm that held heat like a lung. The plan was simple. Set up 2 AN PRC 77 radios. String our line to the loudspeaker box we'd hidden earlier that afternoon. Key the tape and let the jungle do the echoing. The gun team from Bravo Company covered us from 30 yards out, muzzles pointed into the dark like fingers no one wanted to curl. I checked the battery pack by feel, thumb tracing the nick on the metal where I dropped it the day I stopped being a cherry. My Sergeant Murray was a broad-shouldered Ohio cornfield made sentient, with a grin that made you think of warm barns and dewy mornings. He didn't grin that night. "Keep it tight," he said, low and flat. "We run 2 loops and we're out." The jungle had the kind of silence that isn't empty. Cicadas buzzed. Frogs thumped. Somewhere far off, a bamboo clacked like a metronome set to doom. Every sound said alive, alive, and the damp said rot, rot. The men went quiet without being told. I cued the tape. At first it was only static, an old, familiar hiss, the sound of every radio I've ever loved. Then the gong, engineered, too perfect, rolled out like a ripple through black water. A woman's voice rose keening from it, the vowels elongated until they felt like they might never end. The man's voice came next, Vietnamese, thready. So close to crying, it made my teeth ache. "I am dead. I am dead. I am coming home, but I cannot find the way." I didn't understand every word back then. I know the lines by heart now, but I understood the shape of it, a confession to the living from beyond the veil. Even prepared, even cynical, I felt it in my ribs. The tape wasn't for me, but I was made of breath and bone like anyone, and the sound slid into the place where my skin meets the rest of the world and asked to be believed. Murray tapped my shoulder. 2 minutes, he breathed, meaning we'd let it ride for 2, maybe 3 loops. The speakers pushed the voice into the trees. The mangrove made a mouth of itself, shaped the sound, threw it back at us, softened, as if the jungle were agreeing. Then came the answer. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a smear of audio. The tape had its own phantom noise, a studio's room tone, the slight flutter of spooled plastic. But this was different. A second male voice, fainter, somewhere behind the main vocal, repeating the line a heartbeat late, out of time with our recording. My thumb froze on the volume. I watched the reel spin and heard a voice we had not put there say, "I am dead. I am dead." Not perfect, close enough to be wrong. "Kill it," Murray hissed, but I didn't. Instead, I brought the gain down a hair and leaned into the speaker box, like that could make a ghost clearer. The second voice breathed one more line. "Mother, I am cold." And the jungle drank the words whole. The hairs on my forearms rose as if touched by a static that wasn't electricity. Murray slapped the off switch himself. The keening cut. The frogs returned. Far off, a trickle of water began pretending to be innocent again. "Heads up," someone from Bravo whispered on the radio. "Movement left. Might be nothing. Might be leaves thinking they're men." The leaves did a lot of thinking in that war. We waited 5 minutes. 10. My pulse learned a new rhythm and kept it. No contact. The movement, if it had been men, did what men often do when faced with something they can't shoot. It vanished. "Pack it," Murray said. We reeled cable, swallowed the jungle back into our rucks. He didn't say a word about what we'd heard. I didn't ask. Some things you fold and put in a pocket, like a photograph of a girl back home, you can't look at too often without wondering if she's already left you. On the hump back to the perimeter, I kept replaying the lag in my head, the way the second voice came late, like a man who missed the bus and jogged after it, trying to catch his own death. That was the first time. The second time, there were witnesses who still won't talk to me about it, living or dead. We lifted off before dawn in a Huey. 4 of us and 2 speakers bolted to makeshift brackets. The tape rig lashed down with webbing that smelled like damp canvas and work. The pilot was named Katz, Brooklyn accent, a drummer's wrists. He laid the ship low along a ribbon of river, so black it reflected the stars like it wanted to keep them. Our crew chief leaned out the open door with a grin like a dare. My headset crackled with flight chatter and the distant, perpetual cough of this country eating itself. At 300 feet, Katz tipped us over a stand of trees, where, intel said, a PAV unit had been seen moving nights. We weren't there to fight. We were there to haunt. I started the loop. The gong rolled out beneath us and hit the canopy like a drumbeat on skin. The keening rode the downdraft. The man's confession ribboned under our skids and wrapped the trees in words that should have stayed inside a human mouth. Half a minute into the run, the door gunner, spitting image of every kid who'd ever thrown a baseball too hard at recess, tapped his headset and pointed down. "Lights," he mouthed. Not the bright, hard white of a flashlight. Not the angry tongue of a muzzle. Little amber glows winking and going out. Winking and going out like fireflies that had memorized a hymn. Maybe cigarettes. Maybe candles. Maybe nothing. Then the chorus started. I swear this on the worn leather cover of my old pocket New Testament, on my mother's handwriting inside it. The tape said the lines we'd fed it, and the jungle answered. The male voice we'd recorded, the actor's careful grief, came back at us from 3, 4, 5 directions in voices that weren't the actor's voice. Same words, different throats, not in sync. I watched the red leader tape count off the seconds on the spool and listened to a ragged round rise under our ship, as if the jungle itself had learned the script and decided to sing along off-key. "Cut it!" Katz barked. I did. The sound didn't stop. For maybe 5 heartbeats it hung there, a human noise with nowhere to go but down. Then the river pulled the echoes flat. When we landed, Murray said, "Sometimes valleys do that." He meant echoes. He meant acoustics. He meant anything but ghosts. Maybe he was right. But nobody smoked for a while, and nobody made a joke. And when somebody finally did, it fell dead between us, kicking a little. Then still. You want numbers, because numbers feel like control. How many desertions? How many patrols turned back? I can give you what the colonels gave the reporters. No reliable count. I can give you what the privates whispered to each other. Enough to matter. Not enough to end anything. I can give you one. A boy in black pajamas I never saw up close, whose sandal prints stopped in the mud and didn't become anything else. What I can give you that the reports don't is the way the tape felt in my hands after a month of those runs. Warmer than it should have been, as if it had been listening too. I can give you the way silence in a jungle isn't silence at all, but a crowded room where every living thing is holding its breath at once, waiting for the next true thing to break it. You want facts. Here they are, stamped in the cool language of history. The program existed. We called it Operation Wandering Soul. The notorious recording was Ghost Tape Number 10. We blasted it through speakers hidden in the jungle and from helicopters. It played on cultural fear. Die far from home, no rights, no incense, no rest. Become a wandering soul. The effect. Real enough that even men who knew the trick still felt their skin crawl in the dark. The exact numbers of those who ran or broke. No one can prove them. Now the thing that isn't in the reports. On our last run before the Tet season swung back around, we set up a ground broadcast along a ridgeline that looked down on a vein of trailmen used when the moon was a clipped thumbnail. The night tasted like tin. My mouth was dry and my shirt was wet, and if you've been there, you know how that happens. We had Bravo's gun team again. The same frogs, same bamboo clack. War is repetition with teeth. We keyed the gong. We sent the keening. We unspooled the confession and let it run like water down a groove we'd carved 100 times. I could have mapped the next minute in my sleep. At the 20-second mark, a new voice cut in. Female. Not on our tape. Young enough to be a sister, old enough to be a wife. An oi, she said softly, a Vietnamese endearment. The kind of thing you use when you're calling a loved one from another room. Then, in accented English, you hear me. And the words felt like a hand through the dark touching my collarbone. The PRC-77 popped and spat, meters twitching, as if a second transmitter had slipped onto our frequency. But my headset told me nothing. No carrier, no signal strength, just sound. Murray said my name, not in his voice, in my mother's. Something in me tried to stand and run into the trees to answer. Something older hauled me back into my boots by the spine. I slammed the stop on the deck. The reels shuddered to silence, and the voice went with them, as if it had been perched there, waiting for me to cut its perch away. "Pack it," Murray said again, but it came out hoarse, like he'd been shouting orders over battle noise. We didn't talk on the walk out. Bravo's point man kept looking over his shoulder, as if we were going to add a fifth man without asking. You learn to carry things in war. You learn the neat fold that lets a horror fit into a space behind your lungs, where it won't rattle when you breathe. That night, nothing I knew would fold. Back at base, I borrowed a reel-to-reel we used for dubbing and cued number 10 from the top, alone in a plywood hut with a single bulb, stuttering like it had malaria. I told myself I needed to check for a drop-in, a damaged section. I told myself I needed to make sure we hadn't been jammed. Mostly, I needed to hear with the lights on that the world was made of physics and not prayer. I played it 3 times. The second voice wasn't there. The woman wasn't there. My mother wasn't there. Just the gong, the keening, the confession. The studio air pressed so thin you could see through it. So I did what men do when the world refuses to be sensible. I lied to myself. Echoes. Valley acoustics. Another team on a nearby ridge. A trick of nerves. I wrote the lie in my notebook so it could become a fact by being ink. Years later, stateside and soft around the middle, I found a digitized copy of Ghost Tape Number 10 in the sprawl of the internet. The same engineered grief, the same bleached bones of sound. I put on headphones in my kitchen of all places, with the refrigerator humming the eternal hum of American safety, and I hit play. The gong rolled out like a memory. The keening made my scalp crawl in the old way. The man confessed. The tape ended. From the hallway, my wife asked if I'd said her name. I hadn't. I swear I hadn't. I turned the volume down. The refrigerator clicked off. Our house filled with a silence so familiar, it made my heart speed up. The old jungle silence. The one you only notice when the living stop pretending they're not listening. I know what you want from me. Sitting there with your screen and your curiosity, and the part of you that pretends it doesn't want to be scared. You want a clean boundary. It was all a trick, or the dead can learn to use a speaker. I can't give that to you. I can give you the tape, the mission, the facts, the weight of the battery against my hip, and I can give you the voice that answered back from a mouth we didn't wire. Maybe fear is the best transmitter humans ever built. Maybe places remember. Maybe some nights are paper thin and everything you say to them bleeds through. I didn't believe in ghosts when I went to war. I believe in them now.